All right, YouTube, I'm back. Praise the Lord. And so I'm going to give you two recordings, but I don't know how what the label is going to be. But yeah, so there's two recordings. One, the part about where Martin Luther King is talking in the letter of the Birmingham jail focuses on white moderates. And I'm going to say white moderates, and I really feel like he was saying Christians, white moderate Christians. But white moderates, it doesn't matter whether they're Christian or not. If they are white moderate, then they are a danger, to the black community. And it's past time, for us to understand that. Looking at today's Democratic Party should be enough proof of what I'm telling you. But you got people, and I used to be one of them. I used to love Bill and Hillary Clinton. So, that was a long time ago. But, I understand that pull and why people would think that would be an intelligent place, to position, themselves. And it's not. So if you still in love with the Democratic Party, there's something wrong with you, man. Especially if you're black or indigenous. There's something wrong with you. I mean, they shouldn't be able to offer you enough money, because the money that you get is never going to be more valuable than real freedom, So it's that ability to live without nothing and still be content and satisfied, with who you are as a human being, versus if you're a billionaire and you're able to sit and be content with who you are, as a human being. It's a spectrum. We're all supposed to be able to, at some point in life, to be able to step into that position. I felt that when I was homeless. You know what I'm saying? I actually at one point felt the most free that I've ever felt in my entire, life. And I didn't have anything, and I lost everything. So it's a spectrum, as I'm saying. So please listen to the first recording about from MLK, and then the second one from this woman's experience when Trump showed up. When she was, found herself in a white, majority church during that time. So here we go.
Must confess that over the past few years I have been gravely disappointed with the white moderate. I have almost reached the regrettable conclusion that the Negro's great stumbling block in his stride toward freedom is not the white citizens' counselor or the Ku Klux Klaner, but the white moderate, who is more devoted to order than to justice, who prefers a negative peace, which is the absence of tension, to a positive peace, which is the presence of justice, who constantly says, I agree with you in the goal you seek, but I cannot agree with your methods of direct action, who paternalistically believes he can set the timetable for another man's freedom, who lives by a mythical concept of time, and who constantly advises the Negro to wait for a more convenient season. Shallow understanding from people of goodwill is more frustrating than absolute misunderstanding from people of ill will. Lukewarm acceptance is much more bewildering than outright rejection. I had hoped that the white moderate would understand that law and order exist for the purpose of establishing justice, and that when they fail in this purpose, they become the dangerously structured dams that block the flow of social progress. I had hoped that white moderates would understand that the present tension in the South is a necessary phase of the transition from an obnoxious negative peace in which the Negro passively accepted his unjust plight to a substantive and positive peace in which all men will respect the dignity and worth of human personality. Actually, we who engage in nonviolent direct action are not the creator's attention. We merely bring to the surface the hidden tension that is already alive. We bring it out in the open where it can be seen and dealt with, like a boil that can never be cured, so long as it is covered up, but must be open with all its ugliness to the natural medicines of air and light. Injustice must be exposed with all the tension its exposure creates to the light of human conscience and the air of national opinion before it can be cured. To the massive.
All right, so we're going to go from here to the other video, and
So let's get into today's topic. Today, I want to have a conversation particularly about my experience in a predominantly white church. So let me put it into some context, okay? Let me tell you where God's girl G's mind has been. This is happening around the time of the George Floyd murder by the police officers. And it's also around the time when President Donald Trump, who we would refer to as number 45, is in office, and this is the start of the presidential election year. So we're getting ready here in the States to have an election in November. Those events is what prompted it. I do not speak on behalf of all Black or African American people. I do not. I can only speak from my experience, period. And this conversation is not based upon all churches that are predominantly white. It is based upon my church experience at a specific congregation. So I want to tell you everything that led up to the fact that I left a predominantly Black church for a predominantly white church. As you guys know from watching one of my videos previously regarding my broken engagement, if you haven't watched that after this video, you might want to go do that. But you will know that in a previous congregation that I was a part of that was predominantly Black, I was a pretty well-known person within the congregation. I also end up eventually, guys, getting married to someone who actually went to the same congregation. That marriage did not do well, and so it ended up in divorce. And due to the fact that it ended so badly, I just was in need of healing, and I felt that I couldn't get the healing that I needed from that particular church because I couldn't be just me. And so many times, for those of you who actually take up office in any type of church, you understand that sometimes people don't see you as a person in need of healing. They will sometimes only see the office that you hold, and that, you know what, you're supposed to take everything to Jesus, and in overnight you're just supposed to be healed and move on and get over it. Well, it doesn't always work that way, and sometimes you have to seek healing outside of the things that you would normally do. On the wake of that, I had been hearing about this local church who was headed by a white or Caucasian pastor with a predominantly white congregation. And I had heard that he was taking at that time deliberate steps to make his church more multicultural. Those deliberate steps were things like making the music a little bit more diversified. So not just your contemporary Christian music, it was also your hymns, also your contemporary gospel music. And so there was a nice mix there that I truly, truly welcomed. They were also big on giving to mission. I really, really valued that because it's not just about the people here in the States, but it's also about the people around the world that are in need of aid. What ended up drawing me further into that church is that the person who was over their music ministry, who was an African-American gentleman that subsequently used to be a congregation person at the predominantly Black church that I used to not only attend, but was actively involved in the music ministry. So he had taken his family from that congregation and taken an actual paid position over at this predominantly white church as their minister of music. Again, another deliberate step that church took to be more multicultural. So anyway, I ran into the minister of music during one of my visits there, and he saw me coming down the hallway. I was actually trying to exit the church quietly because I did not want to be seen. That particular Sunday, he saw me and he came running down the hall and he called my name and he said, "Hey, I just want to confirm you were that girl that was up on the, the praise team and used to sing in the choir over at this other church." And I sheepishly was just like, yeah, because I knew what was coming and I wasn't sure that I wanted to do that. I wanted an opportunity to sit. So he said, "We need your voice up there. We need a voice that will show continued diversification of music. I need your voice to help me with that gospel sound." And so I told him I needed to think about it and pray about it. So probably fast forward maybe a month later, I had prayed about it and I was like, well, God wouldn't lead me here for nothing. And I really considered myself retired at the time. So I decided to go ahead and participate. And here's the thing, my dear white brothers and sisters, as a black person, just attending the service is actually not that bad. I really enjoyed it. But when I found myself getting involved with the actual ministries that were there, this is where some of the prejudicial things started to come out. So I started participating in ministry. And it was at that point when I started seeing a lot of the racial slurs come out. So let me be very clear. Whenever a change is made, there's going to be a disruption in the normal. And it is normal for people to resist the change, regardless of what the change is. I was anticipating jealousy. What I was not prepared for, because we're all in the body of Christ, I was not prepared for the racial slurs or the racial undercurrent that came. So granted, as African Americans, as people of color, we face discrimination and discriminatory practices, actions on a regular basis, just in our daily life. Can we have one day out of the week where we can just relax and worship God without the same thing that we're dealing with in the world? So there were some early signs that, you know what, maybe this wasn't the church for me, or maybe they weren't trying to be as culturally diverse as I thought, because really, I think that their motive was to convert people to the Republican Party. Early signs. So I'll tell you some phrases that were said. We're at rehearsal one day. I was one of the people that was on mic a lot. And when I say on mic, that means that stood in front of the congregation with a microphone in hand, singing one of the parts. There was a praise team, and so we would rotate seats. There were a lot of people wanting to get on the praise team. The minister of music, again, an African-American man, he would actually have to audition people, and if they could not sing, he had to actually be the one to deliver the bad news that maybe you just need to sing in the choir and be a part of the corporate worship. I'm at rehearsal one day. I'm actually part of the choir as well, so when I'm not on mic, I'm going to be in the choir. And one of the ladies who really wanted to be on the worship team, she decided she wanted to stand next to me and proceeded to tell me, "I'm going to stand next to you so some of your black can rub off on me and maybe I'll be a part of the worship team." Now, I know some of you were saying, "Oh, that's such a compliment." No, it wasn't. It was how she said it. She didn't say it with a smile on her face. She was like, said it out of disgust, like, "You make me sick. So maybe some of your black can," and she didn't even look me in my eyes. She said it with a sideways conversation. And I heard it, and you know what my response was but my inner voice was saying, "Jesus, keep me near the cross." That's what my inner voice said, because you know what? I love Jesus, but you know, my flesh wanted to say something, but I just kept my mouth shut. Don't you just love the Lord? So the next sign that I had is that the church that I went to was actually a pretty large church, and considering where they were located, and they were part of a larger denomination, part of their district meetings were held at this church that I attended because it was a large church and centrally located. And so all the other churches within that district can come to that location and actually have service together. So here's the next sign that something is wrong here. I told you that the minister of music was an African-American gentleman. So he got up there, and after the praise and worship, which was a diverse set, the person that was over that particular service, because you always have like an MC that would introduce the speaker. Here's what he said. It was a white gentleman, one of my white brothers. He goes, man, that colored gentleman, speaking to the minister of music, really knows how to sing. Now, I'm up front on mic because whenever we had a special service like that, he wanted me, the minister of music wanted me on mic. Not a problem. But I'm sitting there like, what in the mahalia is this? What is this? What in the world is going on here? That was my inner voice. So I kind of looked out in the congregation, and they seemed to be in agreement. Again, predominantly white congregation. Looked at the MC and were just like, I know, he is just so good. So I gave that one a pass because I was like, this is really not our congregation, but it was who our congregation was linked up to at a larger, broader scale. That was sign number 2. Sign number 3, a lot of the racial undercurrent came out not so much on Sunday morning. It came out during the week, and I was one that would attend Bible study, and I kept noticing whenever there was a political election or campaign that was going on, it was at the Bible studies that the senior pastor would start making his little commentary that after a while, I couldn't take it anymore. When the election between number 45 and Obama was leaving the presidency is when I saw the biggest racial divide in that church that I attended, and it hurt my heart. So imagine you're at Bible study and you're there for Bible study teaching. As a segue from talking about the Bible study, the senior pastor wanted to make a comment about the political climate and the importance that Christianity has to the political climate. And so I'm like, okay, yes, we all should vote. I definitely will agree with that. We need to vote, people. He said a comment that to this day haunts me. He said, if Jesus were to walk the earth today, if he was here today, he would most likely align and support the Republican Party. And all he kept saying is because of abortion. Republicans do not believe in abortion, and Democrats are, he implied that the Democrats want to kill the baby because remember, Hillary was running and she was pro-choice. I don't mind people having an opinion, and I don't care who you vote for. I just want you to vote. Okay, if you in America or wherever country you watching this, you need to vote. The problem that I had was the fact that he put Jesus as aligning to the Republican Party. Now, I don't know what Jesus would do, but I tell you one thing, Jesus would have did something that was just so brilliant that it would not have put him on either political party side. I mean, even when the people in the Bible came to him, he would always say, well, he that is without sin cast the first stone. He would always have these clever things to say that will cause you to think inwardly. So I don't think Jesus would be up there supporting any political party. He would say stuff like, render unto the Caesar what is Caesar and unto God what is God's. In other words, go vote. I'm sorry, inner voice. So that was sign number 3. Sign number 4, that was just the straw on the camel's back and it just broke the back. I want you to picture it. It is what they was calling a, upper room experience. They would have it every year and they would invite the same man. And the man that they would invite is a white gentleman from South Africa. So I'm like, I love this multicultural thing. I can get with some upper room. But the upper room conference took place this particular year. It took place the same week that the results came in that number 45 was elected into office. Now you have to understand, when I woke up the next day and found out that number 45 was in office, I cried. I was grieved because I saw things that were it was racial and it was discriminatory and sexist and all those other isms that I do not believe the Bible supports. So picture it. I'm grieved and I have to sing because it's an upper room event. So that means you're up there singing, ministering, and trying to help people usher in the presence of God. So I'm up there behind this African-American minister of music, as he wanted me, So I'm grieved. And so while I'm ministering to other people, I need to minister to myself because my heart is broken, but I knew God was still on the throne. The speaker, South African, white gentleman, he comes up on the stage. And I'm thinking, speak to our hearts. Tell us what God said to you. I'm just can't wait, So he was going to get up there and give some exhortation to help people. Here's what he said. Oh, come on and lift your hands. And he said in a very thick accent, lift your hands and thank the Lord that the Obamas are leaving and that President-elect Trump is entering into the White House to usher in the presence of God. Now, I love Jesus, but that right there, I was done. He then proceeded to say that we all needed to get on our knees and thank the Lord for number 45. Now, he didn't say 45. I'm saying 45 because sometimes I just don't like saying that name. So I'm going to say number 45. So mind you, the congregation is full of white faces. I remember looking out into the audience of this predominantly white congregation and thinking to myself, if you support a man who's both racist, sexist, and has all kinds of other isms, what must you think about me? Am I your entertainment? I can't support this. So I turned to the lady who was supposed to be my backup in the event that my voice got hoarse or fatigued, because that does happen. I motioned to her and I just said, and I proceeded to hand her my mic. I did one of these numbers and walked myself off that stage and out the door. I didn't come back. I let the minister of music know that I would not be back. He immediately calls me and we have a conversation. He proceeds to try to talk me off the ledge from leaving, because if I leave, then it was going to be the start probably of a silent exodus out the church of a lot of African Americans. So I proceeded to tell him I would not be back. I told him why. And he said, can you do me a favor? Can you write a letter explaining why you're leaving? Because I've heard your story. And he said, and here's what I have not shared. There have been other African Americans leaving the church for very similar reasons such as yours. Now, in my mind, I was like, well, if you knew this, why did you try to persuade me to stay? Because I can't work through somebody's racial issues, especially if they're not willing to talk about it. So I proceeded to send a letter, which to this day, the pastor of that church has not responded to at all. Here's my summation of maybe what my white brothers and sisters who go to a predominantly all-white evangelical church can do. We need you to speak up. Your silence speaks volumes. When you are silent, your silence is condoning the actions and the comments that are incorrect. Your silence is killing us. Recognize that the crime against people of color that you commit is your willful ignorance. Let me break that down. As a person of color, we have been wanting to have this conversation with you. We are willing to come to the table. But for a lot of our white brothers and sisters, you may feel that the absence of the conversation means out of sight, out of mind, and that it will just fix itself. It will not fix itself. So being willfully ignorant of what is going on in the community and what affects people of color, that becomes the crime that's committed against us. To bridge the racial divide, your actions to do so must be deliberate, intentional, and ongoing. You can't do one thing and think that that is going to heal this racial divide. Know that talking about this racial disparity, specifically in the church, is just as uncomfortable to people of color as it is to you. Because we stand the risk of you saying, it's not that bad. That's not how I am. That's not me. And so when we share our story, we are denied feeling what we've been feeling. Be willing to have the hard conversation, because the conversation is going to be hard. And recognize, my dear white brothers and sisters, that when you take those deliberate acts, take those deliberate intentions to try to bridge the racial gap, you will lose people along the way. And those people I'm referring to are friends of yours, acquaintances of yours, who do not see race as an issue and do not want to try to heal it. I know it was a little uncomfortable. It was uncomfortable for me talking about it, but we all have to be the change that we want to see in the world. And if this video is able to prick someone's heart, to be a catalyst for change, to have those hard conversations, then it's accomplished what it was supposed to do. God's Girl G's out. Thanks.
All right. So there you have it. There you have it. Trump really opened my eyes up to another level of whiteness that I thought I already knew. So, what we're going to continue to discover about white people may not necessarily surprise me, but it will continue to educate me. And out of the white moderates, and when I'm thinking of non-religious white moderates, I'm thinking about liberals. And I never really differentiated between Democrats. If you were a Democrat, it was like really a big tent. It was, okay, you're a Democrat. Like, you're a Christian. You know what I mean? But now, the environment that we're in now has shown me that I actually don't have any Democratic Party affiliations. And that goes from progressives, who I really like. I like a lot of progressives, all the way up to the Henry Cuellars, and the Joe Manchins, who are Democrats in name only. And why they want to be Democrats, I don't know. Maybe it's the power. Because if they actually became Republicans, then they wouldn't be able to get away with the stuff that they're able to get away with in the Democratic Party. So that's just a random thought as to why would they, put themselves through this when they could just be Republicans and just do their thing and keep it pushing. But anyway, I digress. So, looking at this environment that we're in, especially with COVID actually knocked me off of the progressive pedestal that I was kind of, on. And so, that mess that they did with the vaccine, which is insane. And it shows me that they can be just as authoritarian as nutty, conservative, Republican, white people. So you got white people on both sides that could be just as nutty as crazy, can be defined as. And so it was disconcerting, because the people that I thought that I could, align and agree with, get, political things and political and social, things done, really kind of stunned me. And I'll name a couple. Sam Cedar was one of them. I really, really liked, his delivery and, his thought process. Now, not so much. He's a problem. Kim Iverson is another one. She, had and has a level of progressive understanding, but now she's in a space where she wants to cater, to the right. And you got TYT, you got Jimmy Dore, you got Kyle Kalinske, you've got these two nuts called the Vanguard, you've got Humanist Report that, loves to sit up talk about gay stuff, all the time, and it's like, and then you got Vaush, who else? Oh, and then this joker, Rational National. So I listen to all these people in and out, just to kind of, just see, what people, on the left or on the progressive left, let me say that, are talking about. Sometimes I still watch MSNBC, to see what, moderate Democrats, are talking about. And, of course, I still listen to some right, leaning stuff. I don't listen to Rick Wiles as much. Thank Jesus the Christ. Oh, my goodness. I am so happy. I ain't got to sit up and listen to that joker every day. But I'll get him, every now and again. And I have, Fox News. I can kind of keep up a little bit with what's happening, over there. And just, other little here and there clips that pop up on my feed that I'll look into just to see, what Republicans, are talking about. So yeah, there's this range of groups that I can't identify with politically. And Trump did it on one level, and then COVID did it on another level, because a lot of Democrats think that abortion is going to be the thing that's going to make people want to gravitate, to them, when these jokers had all the time in the world and all the opportunity in the world to actually do something about it, that we didn't end up here. So they want people to go have amnesia, to all of that. Then they're forgetting all the damage that they've caused during COVID, where they force people to take an experimental, medication under emergency use. So we're trying to frame this into some kind of context. This is supposed to be an emergency. So now you got to take this, or else you can't go to work, or else we're going to, cut you off, from your livelihood. People close to retirement now have to choose between taking an experimental medicine versus, being able to, retire. And like I said, people just being able to work, and keep their jobs. That affected enough people and enough people's families that the reverberation is going to continue. And these are the kind of micro instances. So if you remember what we were talking about, in the last video about pouring and creating, a solid foundation, the cement or whatever it is, whatever mixture you're pouring to make your foundation has to set. It has to set. It has to set so that when something is placed on top of it, it will actually be able to absorb that weight appropriately. And when you have little holes and cracks and fissures, in your foundation, then over time, water is going to get in there. There's going to be erosion, from pressure, not just from water, but also from pressure. And these little small cracks and holes and fissures will actually end up turning into something else X amount of years later that now have to be dealt with on a macro scale. It's no longer micro, it's macro. Because now these deficiencies that have been allowed to be created, number one, in the process of making the foundation, but have been allowed to fester over time. And now, X amount of years later, these are the problems, that we're still dealing with. It's the same thing with race. It's the same thing with any problem that you continue to shove under the rug. And I am the master of procrastination. I will procrastinate until I cannot procrastinate anymore. And some things I'm still doing that, in my life. Some things I've actually gotten better at it, and it's made an improvement, with, that shift. But white people in this country just don't want to accept that their ethos is not going to last. It's a porous, fissure, crack-filled foundation that is going to disintegrate. It's going to erode over time, and it's going to be your fault, especially white Christians. This is what you built. This is the nation that you stole and you lied and you murdered to get. And the end of it is not going to be anything that's sustainable. If you know anything about Scripture and you look at the Old Testament and you see how often the Lord has been willing to tear down God's temple in order to do a reset, it tells me how ignorant, you are about history, about the context of history, about God, about, his understanding of where he wants his people, to be. Doesn't matter how the rest of the world lives. I mean, the world has been the world the whole time. The differentiator, the difference between you and the world is supposed to be your obedience, to God. But Christians would rather give their obedience to the state. And then they allow their own people to be murdered by the state and to be enslaved by the state and to be abused, by the state so that they can continue to run around and talk about, how they've been blessed, by God because they got, money or they, have all of this level of success and stature, in their communities. It's just a lot. So I'm done. I did my rant on this, and I just hope that there's somebody else, out there that can understand, what I'm talking about and wake up. I hope this woman wakes up. I really hope she wakes up to Christianity, not just what's going on in white churches, but the stuff that's happening in black churches and in Christianity, globally. How evil, the religion is, and how satanic, it is, and the levels, that black people are participating in their own oppression by holding up a religion that is founded on white supremacy. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you for your time and attention, and until the next video.